Jai Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajagacharya Ashtatar Satashi Srimati Divine Grace of Bhaitan Arvind Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Gopinath Bhagavan Ki Jai Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai Jai Nithai Gaur Premanande. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto number 3, chapter 13, text number 26. Tesham satam veda vitanamutir. Tesham satam veda vitanamutir. Brahma vadayatma Gunanuvadam. Brahma Vadharyatma Gunanuvadam. Vinadya Bhuyo Vibuddhayaya. Vinadya Bhuyo Vibuddhayaya. Gajendra Lilo Jalama Vishe Avivesha. Gajendra Lilo Jalama Vivesha. Tesham Satam Veda Vitanamutir. Brahma Vadharyatma Gunanuvadam. Vinadya Bhuyo Vibuddhayaya. Gajendra Lilo Jalama Vivesha. Brahma Vadaryatma Gunanuvadam. Vinadabuyo Vibuddhayaya. Jalanjalilo Jalama Vivesha. Madri. Tesham Vedam Veda Vitanamutir. Brahma Vadaryatma Gunanuvadam. Vinadya Bhuyo Vibuddhayaya. Gajendra Lilo Jalama Vivesha. Word for word, Tesham, of them, Satam, of the great devotees, Veda, all knowledge, Vitanamurtihi, the form of expansion, Brahma, Vedic sound, avadharya, knowing it well, Atma, of himself, Guna anuvadam, transcendental glorification, Vinadya, resounding, Bhuyaha, again, Vibhuda, of the transcendentally learned, Udayaya, for the elevation or benefit, Gajendra Leelaha, playing like an elephant, Jalam, the water, Avivesha, entered. Translation and purport is by His Divine Grace Abhay Chanaravinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Translation: playing like an elephant, he entered into the water after roaring again in reply to the Vedic prayers by the great devotees. The Lord is the object of the Vedic prayers, and thus he understood that the devotees' prayers were meant for him. Purport: the form of the Lord in any shape is always transcendental and full of knowledge and mercy. The Lord is the destroyer of all material contamination because his form is personified Vedic knowledge. All the Vedas worship the transcendental form of the Lord. In the Vedic mantras, the devotees request that the Lord to remove the glaring effulgence because it recovers his real face. That is a version of the Ishopanishad. The Lord has no material form, but his form is always understood in terms of the Vedas. The Vedas are said to be the breath of the Lord, and that breath was inhaled by Brahma, the original student of the Vedas. The breathing from the nostril of Brahma caused the appearance of Lord Boar, and therefore the Boar incarnation of the Lord is the personified Vedas. The glorification of the incarnation by the sages on the higher planets consisted of factual Vedic hymns. Whenever there is glorification of the Lord, it is understood that Vedic mantras are rightly being. Whenever there is glorification of the Lord, it is to be understood that Vedic mantras are being rightly vibrated. The Lord was therefore pleased when such Vedic mantras were chanted, and to encourage his pure devotees, he roared once more and entered the water to rescue the submerged earth. Translation again: playing like an elephant, he entered into the water after roaring again in reply to the Vedic prayers by the great devotees. The Lord is the object of the Vedic prayers, and thus he understood that the devotees' prayers were meant for him. Om Agyanatimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasme Shri Gurave Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivas Adi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So we're continuing with the appearance of Lord Varahadev. I believe it's next Sunday, which is Varaha Dwadasi. So it's a very auspicious meditation to meditate on Varahadev's appearance day. It's the day after Baimi Ekadasi. Okay, so what's happened so far is that Swayambhuv Manu has submitted himself very humbly to his father Swayambhuv Manu, rather to his father Lord Brahma. And Lord Brahma then instructs Swayambhuv Manu. And then Manu tells his father, I'm happy to do all of these things, but the earth's kind of not in its place. In fact, the earth has been submerged in the Garbhodaka ocean, which fills half the universe. So then Lord Brahma deliberated, contemplated, and from this contemplation, something came out of his nose. And that object that came out of his nose increased in size and became bigger and bigger and bigger until it became very gigantic and appeared like a boar. But then for Lord Brahma, who is the creator of the universe, for such a boar to appear from his nostril without his desire, and for such a creature to be manifest Although he's the creator of all living entities, in the sense that Krishna is the creator, he says, Bijo ham sarvabhuteshu, that everything, he is the seed, he is the father, the giver of life for all living entities. But he's empowered Lord Brahma to create the secondary manifestation. Right? So all the forms of bodies so the living entities can enjoy are all engineered by Lord Brahma, the original engineer, the first engineer. And so this Adi Kavi, the Lord Brahma, who is the first student of Krishna himself, gets the empowerment to create all these bodies. And it's mentioned in Bhagavatam for the benefit and for the out of compassion for the living entities who are lying dormant within Vishnu. They have so many desires to be fulfilled materially. So therefore Lord Brahma creates these bodies. Prabhupada in many places, he says that when the living entity, not understanding him or herself to be the spark, the living entity or the Atma, the soul, and that the Supreme Soul is the master, and that one should worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead, which is one's dharma, then what generally happens is that one thinks himself the doer, thinks himself the body, thinks that everything happens due to oneself. So then Prabhupada says, even if you have a tinge of material desire at the end of life, you'll have to take another body. And Prabhupada says Krishna is so kind that he allows you another body to be able to enjoy your desires. You can think of it this way: we're stuck in a prison. We've committed a grave mistake of neglecting Krishna out of envy. And we have come from the spiritual world into the material world, covered by the mind and senses, false ego first, then the mind and the senses. And now we are here trying to enjoy in this prison. It doesn't seem logical that we get opportunity to enjoy in a prison. If you go to prison cells, even within this material world, the idea is rectification of consciousness. Because the living entity has made a mistake, they need to be rectified in consciousness. So they'll go through hardship, so that their consciousness, within their consciousness they'll understand, I shouldn't do that act again. But Krishna is so kind that in this material world, despite us going through life after life of suffering, life after life of nothing works for our enjoyment, still we desire another body, we desire a certain particular enjoyment. Krishna says, all right, take it. All right, take it. So Prabhupada says Krishna is so kind, because material nature wouldn't allow such a thing originally. We're meant to suffer in material existence life after life. And Krishna is giving opportunity, okay, take another body. So then it becomes very confusing. How is it Krishna is so kind to make us continue to suffer in material existence? The idea is that Krishna wants us to understand that here's another body, again you'll try to enjoy, again you'll fail, so therefore forget it and turn your face towards me. And once again we'll establish our relationship. So therefore, in this mood, Lord Brahma is creating these bodies. Out of compassion to these living entities, they need to perform bhakti yoga somehow, in whatever way possible. So therefore they need a material body. When they perform their activities at whatever level of consciousness they are, according to the Vedas, they'll gradually progress themselves into the platform of pure devotional service. And that means they'll let go of the material world and go back to Godhead. So that's the thought process of Brahma, thought process of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Somehow or other give the medicine in a sugar-coated fashion to the extent that they'll come back to Godhead. So then Lord Brahma, he knows all the different varieties of living entities that he's created. But suddenly something has come out of his nose that he has no idea about. First of all, he knows what a boar is. But for a boar to go from a small size to such a gigantic size, he's never created such a thing before. For that boar to create such a tumultuous sound that he's never heard before, it's naturally very bewildering for him and his sons, who appeared in the beginning itself, along with him. So then it's very confusing. If you think about it, sometimes most of our activities are like that. In material nature, Prahlad Maharaj says our solutions are themselves to the problems. There are so many material problems, but the material solution it's in of itself causing another problem. So it bewilders living entities. That, I tried, like Prabhupada says, they endeavor so hard and they build a nice house, but then it was taken away by fire. It was, immediately it's burnt by fire. So it bewilders the living entity. I struggled so hard, I got it, then suddenly it disappears. The hankering and lamentation burns the living entity more and more. But for the sages and Lord Brahma, they're struck with wonder seeing the wonderful bow-like form in the sky. And they began to argue amongst themselves. Could it be this? Could it be that? Could it be this? And their argument is not so much on a material platform, so to speak. Theirs is of spiritual nature because they're dealing with the Vedas directly. As mentioned in this purport, Krishna, from his breathing comes the Vedas. And by his flute playing, that knowledge entered into the ear holes of Lord Brahma. And Lord Brahma then understood. Because Hrida Adi Kaviye, from the heart, Krishna instructed Lord Brahma. So then, Lord Brahma then starts thinking and arguing with his sons. What is this? What kind of living entity is this? And so as we see in the last couple of days, then while he's deliberating, the Lord reciprocates with the devotees just to pacify them. Look, it's me. And he starts roaring tumultuously. And hearing this roar, the devotees understood, headed by Lord Brahma, that this uncommon voice which echoed in all directions, it pleased their heart. It's mentioned in the pastime of Lord Nrsimhadev and Prahlad Maharaj, when it came to head to the extent that in the beginning, Hiranyakashipu, he was so affectionate to his son Prahlad Maharaj. He would bring him to his lap, smell his head, affectionately caress him, and ask him, what did you learn in school today? And Prahlad Maharaj, being a pure devotee, then told his father that actually I learned that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is Vishnu, and that we should surrender to him. And Hiranyakashipu, hearing his what do they call it? His lifelong enemy, hearing his enemy being glorified, because that very same personality came as Varahadev and kills Hiranyaksha, his younger brother. So then he hears this and he becomes extremely angry. And he doesn't chastise the son. He looks for the teachers, because he knew that the son will not become contaminated unless by teachers, because he's a young boy. So he chastises the teachers. And the teachers say, no, we taught properly. It's just him. He's the problem. So like this, there's a couple of reiterations. Then again, another time they come back after trying to unsuccessfully brainwash Prahlad Maharaj. Prahlad Maharaj sits on his father's lap. And again, his father chastises and rebukes him. And then his father then decides, let me just kill the boy. He is like in a forest of sandalwood. He's like the thorns. He's going to destroy the whole family. So let me just destroy him. And he tries in so many ways, it doesn't work. Finally, he himself takes up the task of trying to kill Prahlad Maharaj. And then he tells, so where's your Vishnu now? Where's your Supreme Personality of Godhead now? I'm going to chop off your head. Is he going to come and protect me? Where is he now? And Prahlad Maharaj, being fixed in transcendent knowledge, said, he's everywhere. He's present right here now. And Hiranyakashipu, being a great atheist, said, is he in that pillar? And Prahlad Maharaj said, yes. In fact, Nrsimhadev was actually waiting behind the pillar. It's mentioned Nrsimhadev was waiting there, behind the pillar, looking, waiting for the right moment. Because he was waiting, this guy touches my devotee, he's finished. So then Hiranyakashipu gets so angry, he destroys the pillar. And it's mentioned there that actually the demigods were so afraid of Hiranyakashipu that even if he just moved an eyebrow, they would just do everything, just to make sure that he'd be pacified. That's how scared of Hiranyakashipu they were. So when he struck the pillar, they thought, that's it, our universes are destroyed. They thought that he's destroyed our universes. That's how scared they were. But suddenly, that sound was replaced by such a very uncommon figure of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the half man, half lion. It said that it was so uncommon that they couldn't discern whether it was a lion or whether it was a man. That's how bewildered and confused they were. Despite their eyes coming in contact with the Personality of Godhead, they just couldn't register what they're seeing. In the same way that Brahma and his sons, the sages headed by Marichi, they couldn't register what is it that they're seeing. It doesn't look like a normal boar. It doesn't look like a normal lion. But then when the Lord started to roar in both circumstances, it's mentioned by Prabhupada there that the roar of Nrsimhadev was like a thunderbolt. And naturally men are, or human beings, they are afraid by the sound of a thunderbolt. But this sound was so uncommon that for the devotees, they felt pacified in the heart, but the demons, they felt very scared. Right? It's mentioned that when Lord Nrsingadev roared, that even the demon wives, their wives had miscarriages. That's how much fear that was there. That's how much anxiety, that's how much damage it caused to the heart. But for the devotees, it was the other way. So that brings us to the example of how the Lord is like a cat. To the kittens, the kitten is not afraid of the mother cat. You know, the teeth of the mother cat is just simply a shelter for the kitten. Because the kitten will go here, go there, go here, go there. And the mother, she'll just grab the neck of the kitten and take wherever it needs to go. But for the rat, the jaws of the mouth of the cat is death. It's very fearful. So in the same way, the Lord, He's roaring, enlivened Brahma and his sons. And they immediately understood by this being enlivened. Like it's mentioned that when the Pandavas finally saw Krishna after a long time, they felt like enlivened, as if their whole body came back, their life air came back. Every part, like the limbs, their limbs became enlivened. So in the same way, Brahma and the other sages, they felt that enlivening nature by hearing the Supreme Personality of Godhead's roar. Which is quite interesting. Then you can understand that how important this hearing process is. Because whatever we see is not actually whatever we actually see, being covered by material illusion. Prabhupada says in this purport that the Lord is the destroyer of all material contamination because His form is personified Vedic knowledge. So you can understand, whatever we see in this material world is simply an illusion. It appears to be enjoyment for the senses, but it's not. In fact, it's meant for Krishna's service. What the illusion is that this energy is meant for my enjoyment. That's the illusion. The reality is this energy is meant for Krishna's enjoyment. The energy itself is not false. It's real. It's temporary because it comes and goes. It's manifested and unmanifested. But it's meant for Krishna's enjoyment, not our own. When we go into that sort of illusory state of consciousness, naturally everything that we do in this material world causes bewilderment. So Krishna is the destroyer of material contamination. So therefore it's Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnu. It begins with hearing and chanting the glories of the Lord. Right? We understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead through our ears. Of course, once we become more and more purified, Atashi Krishna Namadi Na Bhaved Grayam Indriye. You cannot understand Krishna's form through these blunt senses. Sevan Mukhi Jivado Swayameva Spuratyada. That same form becomes manifest or revealed to us when Sevan Mukhi Jivado, by engaging in the service of the Lord, beginning with the tongue. And Prabhupada says there's the diet and then there's the medicine. What is the medicine? The chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra. And what's the diet? If you don't know the diet, then come on. How long have you been coming to this temple? It's taking prasadam. So that's the diet, and the medicine is chanting Hare Krishna. If we are able to just control this one sense, the tongue, just this one sense, all other senses will fall into line. It's meant in Srimad Bhagavatam when Uddhava is talking to Krishna. And Krishna then refers Uddhava to the Avadut Brahman that Yadu Maharaj meets. And there this Avadut Brahman says that actually, I am like this, I'm going here and there, completely dependent on the Supreme Personality of Godhead, because I have followed the instructions or I have taken advice from my 24 gurus. In that section, it's mentioned that Krishna is encouraging Uddhava that simply by your intelligence, you can understand the nature of the soul. But there, it's in so many purports, in so many places, it's emphasized that actually an intelligent person understands that yes, I'm not the body but the soul, but I need the help of the devotees to go further. I need the help of a spiritual master. That is real intelligence. So in this section, we don't stray from the path of understanding that we need help, because the bound cannot help the bound. One must be untied to help the other person who's tied up. So here in this section, halfway through, just before the Pingala Gita, the Avadut Brahman talks about different animals
who represent the senses. Their senses cause their death, in other words. So like the moth, being attracted by fire, flies into the fire and dies. Right? So in the same way, our sense of sight being attracted by form causes complete entanglement in this material world. So in the same way, so many different senses are given. For the tongue, it's given the fish. That the fish sees that bait on the hook, and unable to control its desire to enjoy that little bit of meat or whatever it's there, it immediately grabs onto it, and immediately the hook lodges itself into the jaw or the mouth of the fish, and that's it, finished. It's dead. It's taken by the fisherman, and it's finished. Life is finished. So in the same way, in the purports, it's mentioned there that this, and the Avadut Brahmana, he gives a couple of verses, 2 verses on just this tongue. If you're able to control the tongue, other senses will be satisfied. Immediately, rather satisfied, they'll be controlled, they'll be subdued. Why? If you control all the other senses, if you're able to control all the other senses except the tongue, then when the tongue is unsatiated, when it's not satisfied, like for example, if you fast, artificial fasting, if you fast and fast, naturally those senses become very weak because the tongue is not satisfied, the tongue is not satisfying the belly is not distributing energy. So the senses become weak. You feel less desire, less pressure from the senses to enjoy. A little bit less. But the tongue is voracious. The desire to enjoy becomes so strong that you want to keep tasting so many things that the purpose of fasting becomes overwhelmed with this constant desire to enjoy something to eat. Like for example, when you fast for Janmashtami, or when you fast for Nirjala Ekadasi, for the first half of the day, the mind is constantly, I need water, I need to eat, I need water, I need to eat. When am I going to get a chance to eat? How many hours till I get to eat, when I get to enjoy? So the mind constantly goes on overdrive because the tongue is unsatiated. But then, what happens over a period of time is that if you're engaged in practicing Krishna consciousness, over a period of time, that becomes it gets quietened down. You're able to tolerate it. It's there, but it's not in the forefront of your consciousness. You're engaged in the service. Like for example, Janmashtami, you're setting up the stall, you're cleaning up the temple room, you're doing service. You just become absorbed. By the time you realize it's already, the Maha Abhishek's over, the Maha Arti's over, and they're serving the Ekadasi feast. So then by the time you realize it's okay, you take prasad. But here in the purport, it's explaining that by such fasting, this tongue becomes so voracious that the desire becomes so strong that you go in the opposite direction. From tyaga, you go to complete bhoga, complete enjoyment. That the whole purpose of fasting becomes void, nullified. That after you're fasting, you just go and just, let loose. I'll eat this, I'll eat that, and you just stuff your mouth and you're finished. The belly becomes burdened with so much weight. And then all of the other senses, they become so strong that the living entity just becomes completely overwhelmed. Like you've seen that example of the chariot and the horse, how the living entity is like the driver, and the senses are like the horses. Those horses become so wild. If you actually have a look at the picture down at the bottom, it's a little cliff there actually. So when I meet people, I tell them, you see that cliff? This is what you call Friday night. When people take a bit too much and they're on the roads and they're on the street completely smashed, that's what this picture's showing. That if they just followed their intelligence a little bit, they wouldn't have gone off the cliff. And it's so funny, so many people understand that example. So many people are able to relate to that. That if you're just able to control the senses, you won't fall off the cliff. Yeah, you're right. Reminds me of Friday night. Because they let go, finished. Finished work, week is done, let me just enjoy the weekend. And the whole life goes like that, Finish the 5 days just for those 2 days. And of the 2 days, I don't even remember what happens because they're completely finished. So like this, the sense of tongue is very powerful. So therefore, it's mentioned that if you're able to control the tongue in a regular fashion, the other senses will also come under control. Therefore, the diet and the medicine should always be practiced, should always be taken. The prescribed medicine is chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And the prescribed diet is eating prasadam. And of course we eat prasadam not that We fill ourselves to the neck all the time and roll around, not being able to do service. We eat only that much which is required to be able to do service, to keep the body and soul together. And I think it was Ghanshyam Prabhu was mentioning, I think it was last night or the night before, when, was it Ghanshyam Prabhu? I've forgotten. A previous speaker, sometimes you hear so many classes you've forgotten where you hear it from. A previous speaker was mentioning that how in the beginning days when the devotees came to Prabhupada, and they were all hippies, Prabhupada would have a jar of gulab jamuns, his ISKCON bullets, and you'd say, whenever you feel like, you come and take. And over a period of months, weeks, months, became more purified. They took initiation for Prabhupada. Prabhupada said, okay, only sweets once a day now, or once a week now. And one devotee was shocked. But Prabhupada, you said before that we can come and take anytime we like. And Prabhupada said, yes, that time you didn't ask any question, right? You followed. And he said, yes, now you follow. Now you follow. Last time you just took the instruction, didn't ask any questions, right? So this time you also do the same thing. So gradually we learn the art of regulating. But Krishna says, one who eats too much, eats too little, sleeps too much, sleeps too little, cannot perform yoga. Not possible. Mind will just be too agitated. Coming back to the point, Atashi Krishna namadi na bhavid grahim indriya. You won't be able to understand Krishna with these blunt senses. But we're so fortunate that by this process of hearing from bona fide authorities, we can immediately understand Krishna. Ajopi san avyayatma bhutanam ishvaropi san pragatim swam adhisthaya sambhavami atmamaya. That Krishna is unborn, eternal. That although he appears in this material world millennium after millennium, he appears in his original form. Sambhavami atmamaya, in his original form. The form of the Lord in any shape is always transcendental and full of knowledge and mercy. So this is the form in which the Lord appears. It's not mundane, it's not material. He appears in his original transcendental form. So our Lord appears to be like a boar. And we hear so many times, Saeva Gokara and so many other verses that, you're no different from a hog, you're no different from a pig, if you're just engaged in material existence. We wonder, why the Lord appeared in the form of a boar. The Lord knows how to enjoy, but his form is not of a boar. It resembles a boar because that's the closest thing we can see in relation to him. But it's not really a boar of the material nature. It resembles a boar. Same thing in one place, Prabhupada tells in a purport to one of his disciples, that the Lord appears in this material world and performs these human-like pastimes. But actually his pastimes in the spiritual world, they are transcendental. Whatever he performs in the material world, they attract the living entities to him because he performs human-like pastimes. But there are pastimes that are beyond this human conception that happens in the spiritual world. And a hint is given because the Lord senses, he can do anything he likes with any of his senses. So when he's in Braja, performing his pastimes with his devotees, he's performing pastimes on that platform. It appears to us, here's a small boy, he's stealing butter, he's enjoying, everyone loves him. He grows up being enjoying the company of all his friends and relatives. Human-like. But actually there's a transcendental pleasure that comes from hearing about Krishna stealing butter. There's a transcendental pleasure that comes from Krishna running away from the battlefield. So it's human-like, because it appears to be human, but it's not. So in the same way, he appears to be like a boar, but he's not the boar of our material conception. So therefore, he doesn't perform those activities of a normal boar. Ajopi san avyayatma. So he is unborn, he is eternal. But more importantly, sambhavami atmamaya. We should never forget this one point. The Lord has formed, this whole purport Prabhupada's talking about. The impersonalists say, please remove your form so that we can see your effulgence. And the personalists understand that you guys are fools because you're actually supposed to beg the Lord to see the form and remove the effulgence. So they're doing it the wrong way around due to a lack of knowledge. In fact, you can't even say that they see the form of the Lord. They're unable to see the form of the Lord. And they simply just take the Lord's form to be material. They take form to be material, therefore he must be formless, nirakar. Right? When the Vedas, the Upanishads, the Puranas, not so much the Puranas, when the Vedas, the Upanishads, when they talk about He is Nirakar, without form. It's without material form, but he has a spiritual form. But lack of discrimination, lack of knowledge, lack of understanding, impersonalists are unable to understand it. So here that's one section. And then finally Prabhupada finishes by talking about how the Lord is personified Vedas. From him comes the Vedas. Those Vedas enter the heart of Lord Brahma through the ears. And when Lord Brahma breathes, that same Vedas come out again as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the personified Vedas. So you can understand Krishna's transcendental position. Krishna, he's in the spiritual world, he enters the material world, still being unaffected. He gives knowledge to Lord Brahma. Through that knowledge he enters into his heart. And then from the breathing of Lord Brahma he then exits. So how can you understand the supreme nature of the Supreme Personality of Godhead? Completely inconceivable. Completely beyond our understanding. Adhokshaja, he's beyond our senses. So the sages, they understood this though. Being elevated sons of Lord Brahma, and Lord Brahma himself understood him to be the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Here's something that's uncommon. Here's something that's roaring so tumultuously, that's enlivening us. We have not experienced anything like this. It's not my creation, it's not our father's creation, Lord Brahma's. So therefore, it must be the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Because he is beyond our father, Lord Brahma. So therefore they chant the Vedic hymns in glorification of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And here's the final point I wanted to mention. The Lord, when he was therefore pleased with such Vedic mantras were chanted. Why? Because the purpose of the Vedas, or the Vedic mantras, is to glorify the Supreme Personality of Godhead. If you have a look at the Vedas, they may recommend and suggest so many different yagyas to please the demigods. But in each of these yagyas, there's mantras glorifying the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Because Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, only less intelligent persons worship the demigods. And those less intelligent persons don't understand that the benefits that they get are temporary. The demigods themselves are temporary. In fact, I am the one who's giving the benedictions through these demigods. So when they directly glorify Krishna, giving up their understanding that the demigods are supreme, naturally Krishna is pleased. Because A, his system's working, and B, the living entity is slowly getting out of the Maya, getting out of material existence. So then, being pleased, it's like, the Prabhupada gives the example of the prodigal son. That when the rich man's son leaves home, and when he finally comes back, the father is extremely pleased. Whatever the son does, he's extremely pleased with the son. But in this example, over a period of time, it's kind of like, when someone new comes to devotional service, and you see them, wow, you sing so nicely, you're playing mridanga, you're doing so much nice service, and over a period of time, material nature and time covers the consciousness. And then we no longer see that aspect of that devotee. You've been here so long, can't you play a bit better? Can't you do your service a bit better? Contaminated consciousness. But Krishna never sees like that. Krishna's always grateful. Another purport in Srimad Bhagavatam, it's mentioned, Krishna, because he never forgets the service of his living entity, it's in the verse, Tasmad Bhavantam Anavadyam Anantaparam. Uddhava is beseeching Lord Krishna that, my mind and senses, they're just simply absorbed in material existence. But you, my Lord, you are Narayana Narasakam. You are the friend of the living entity. You're Lord Narayana, but you're the friend of Nara, of the human beings. You're the shelter of the human beings. So therefore I'm taking shelter of you. Please instruct me. In that verse, it's mentioned that the Lord is Sarvagya, all-knowing. He is Ishvara, the Supreme Controller. And the Acharyas very beautifully, they analyze these two words. We'll start from the beginning. Tasmad Bhavantam Anavadyam. Anavadyam means he's without fault. Anantaparam. This anta means restriction by space, by time. And param means restriction by space. Anavadya, anantaparam means he's not restricted by time and space. Same way, Sarvagya, he knows everything. He's not restricted. He's not limited. And Ishwaram, he's the supreme controller. There's no one who controls him. He is the controller. So in this way, the Acharyas mention in this purport that the living entity can feel satisfied. Uddhava is bringing out these qualities of the Lord to show the living entities that don't worry, the Lord always remembers your service. He'll always reciprocate with you because he remembers your service. And the Acharyas mentioned there specifically that the Lord, it's mentioned that the Lord never holds on to your faults. He's always looking for the small amount of sincere, even if it's small, amount of sincere service the living entity performs. And because he always remembers this, he's always grateful. So our problem is that we're forgetful. And naturally, because we're forgetful, we lose our gratitude. Therefore, we have to constantly keep in touch. Therefore, Prabhupada has given the morning program. Our whole program is based on being in contact with Krishna. So therefore, the Lord was pleased when such Vedic mantras were chanted. And to encourage his pure devotees, he rowed once more into the water to rescue the submerged earth. So here is the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the final point I wanted to mention. That when the Lord was glorified, he reciprocated with them. He never forgot, he never forgets any sincere amount of service the living entity performs unto him. He never forgets, and he's always grateful. So this is the characteristics, these are the qualities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, which makes one captivated, naturally wants to associate. I always want to be around such a person. Because who wants to be around a person who always picks faults on you? Right? It's very natural. But the Supreme Personality of Godhead is so merciful that he's always looking for that sincere amount of service, and he's always ready to reciprocate with that sincere amount of service. So therefore, all the sages did were confused. In that confused state, they just heard the sound of the Lord and they vibrated the Vedic mantras. That's all they knew. And Krishna was so pleased that he roared to encourage the pure devotees. The word in the Sanskrit is udayaya, for the elevation or for the benefit. Of course, whatever the Lord does is for his own enjoyment. He doesn't need to roar to enjoy. He can roar to enjoy as well. He can really get into the mood, like an actor, Queen Kuti says. He'll really get into the mood of the boar and he'll just roar and enjoy. Like when you see dogs and birds, when they make sound, that's how they're trying to exhibit their enjoyment. What, you think the dog doesn't like barking? Why does it bark so much, making so much noise? It's that sort of material bhava of a dog. I'm a dog, I bark, this is my enjoyment. I'm a bird, I fly, this is how I enjoy. So the Lord knows how to enjoy better than that. But here the Lord is using this as an opportunity to encourage his devotees. That look, it's okay, it's me, it's fine. I'll go and get the earth submerged in the ocean. So we can understand this, that the Lord reciprocates with his devotees. And throughout this whole section, like tomorrow and the day after, you'll hear about the transcendental features of Lord Bor. You hear about his qualities. And later on, when you come across him fighting Hiranyaksha, there you'll hear Hiranyaksha completely berating the Lord with such foul language. And it's mentioned the Lord felt hurt at heart. So again, you'll see that personal aspect of the Lord come up again. So this section is very nice. It's a very good opportunity to meditate on the Lord, his personality, his characteristics, his qualities, to meditate on that, and to also to become more and more Krishna conscious and become more grateful and to render more and more service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So I'll end here. If there's a few questions, comments, yes, bro. That's what illusory is. The other way around is that reason why the material existence is illusory is that we think it's for our enjoyment. That's the illusion. We think we can enjoy material existence. That's the illusion. Yes, bro.
Since Krishna is someone who transcends time, as gentleman right there already said that. He's about material desire. Every form that he's coming in front of us, does that have any significance of why is he coming particularly in that form?
First thing you can understand, the Lord appears in the form he desires, whatever he likes. That's the first thing. The second thing, it's mentioned the Lord, the devotees meditating on the Lord, they have a specific relationship with the Lord in a particular way. And so the Lord accepts a form, becoming completely submissive or completely servitude, or becoming completely servantile to the pure devotee, completely submissive to the pure devotee's desires. So he will accept a form in which the devotee can reciprocate with the Lord. So there's two aspects. One, the Lord desires it because he wants to satisfy his pure devotee. So therefore on the Vaikuntha planets, there are so many forms of the Lord that the living entities can reciprocate and enjoy with in their loving relationship with him. Okay, well, last question.
Is the Kabodhaka portion and the 14 planetary systems, they're on a different level?
You can understand you have an egg-shaped structure, which is the universe. Half of that egg-shaped structure is covered by the ocean. Garbhodakashayi Vishnu is lying on that ocean. From his navel comes the lotus flower. On top of the lotus flower, the topmost section of that lotus flower is Satyaloka, Brahma's Loka, and through the whole stem is the 14 planetary systems. So they exist within the same lunchbox, so to speak, the same egg. It's just that egg is half filled with water, that's all.
Okay, can you say that? Because it's mentioned like the upper 3 planetary systems, they're not same knowledge. So
That's at the time of annihilation. In general, like this particular point in time, there's no annihilation happening. The waters, they rise up until the top planetary systems during the end of the Yuga. Not end of the Divya Yuga, rather. At the end of Kali Yuga. At the end of the day of Lord Brahma, they rise that way. Yeah, so it's at the end of the day of Brahma, rather. At the end of life of Brahma, everything just finishes.
just one small thing. The Pandavas feel when Krishna actually flew Panchajanya, did they actually feel, did they have a similar experience as when everybody felt, let's say demigods felt when Varaha was actually in the sun? Narasimha who actually was growing, did the devotees actually feel how they were not fearful? So did the Pandavas also felt the same way when Krishna blew his moksha and beginning of the train?
Short answer, yes. If you read Canto 7, Lord Nrsingadev slays the king of the demons. That's that chapter. He slays Hiranyakashipu. In the beginning of that chapter, when the Lord appears, in that section, Prabhupada writes in the purport that this thunderbolt sound scares the demons, but gives pleasure to the devotees. That's why the example is given of the cat and the kitten. So it's mentioned specifically in Bhagavad Gita. It's mentioned it shattered the hearts of the people on the other side of the battlefield. So naturally, whatever the Lord does enlivens the devotees and completely destroys the demons or reduces their inspiration. Okay, thank you very much. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Shri Shri Radha Gopinath Bhagavan ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Nitai Gaur Premanande.